Hey, what's up guys? Chris Jr. here for Kriscoart Productions. Welcome to another tutorial. This is actually pretty important for me. I've gotten a lot of requests on how I did the Team Oscar video, which you can find a link right here or in the description. That's a very personal video that I did. It dealt with some subject matters that really I kind of kept hidden, and I was finally able to kind of put them out there, and it felt pretty good because you guys have been amazing, really supportive, and I'm really thankful for that. But anyways, let's put all that aside and let's jump into the technical breakdown of this week's video. The main idea here is to create the illusion that the animation is actually created by doing hand-drawn frame-by-frame animation, when really all we're using is two hand-drawn frames. We're looping those two frames, and then we're creating the rest of the animation in After Effects. One thing to keep in mind while you're drawing these elements is to keep each element separated from each other, even when it comes to each single limb of your character, all separate, so that then you can have full control when animating in After Effects. Let's get started. Alright, so the first step that we're going to do is download all those images off of your phone. I'm going to be using image capture just because it comes standard with my Mac. So go ahead and find those pictures and select them. You can hold shift to select multiple ones, and then once you do that, you're going to want to pick the folder you want to dump all these pictures onto. So go ahead and click other, and then you can find the folder that you need. I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel just because I've done this already. And then after that, you would want to just hit import, and it will import all those selected images. Alright, so once we've done that, let's go ahead and launch After Effects, and we're going to want to create a new composition. I'm just going to make it standard high definition, so 1920 by 1080, and click OK. And actually, a quick little trick that I did, if we go back to our composition settings, let's change our frame rate. You can do either 12 or 8, but I did 10 frames per second for my example. And what that does is, it pretty much just chops the animations up a little bit so that it adds to that hand-drawn effect that we need. So go ahead and import those images that you just imported from your phone. And let's see here, this one could work as our first frame, so I'm going to go ahead and import that. And then we just got to find another image that's similar to that one. So now we have two frames. So I pretty much just drew this character's head and body twice, and that's what we're seeing right now. I'm gonna go ahead and drop some curves in just to make those whites, or actually kind of yellowish colors, pop away from my pencil drawing, so that then we can apply a color key, and you can just adjust those settings based on the color that your paper is. Then I'm gonna drop a tint, and I'm gonna make that map to white color a little bit darker, and I'm gonna create a garbage mask just to get rid of that extra junk that we don't really need. Now, a good thing to do before we move on, it's let's toggle to a black background instead of just having that transparent grid. You can see that he has a white halo, so I'm just gonna drop that down to a black. So now that's fixed. We're gonna duplicate this layer. First, we're gonna name it outline, duplicate it, and name the bottom layer fill. So we have our outline now. We just want to pretty much color in the rest of the body. So I'm going to bring that tint back to a regular tint. I'm going to decrease the curves a little bit. And then the next step I'm going to do is completely delete the mask that I originally created, and I'm going to create a much more precise mask. Just pretty much just try to stay into those that black outline, and you'll be fine. So remember, this layer is going underneath the previous layer that we created, which is just the outline. So this is going to look pretty clean in the end. So let me just speed through here and close this up, and now you can see what that did. Pretty much the combination of the two layers, we have our outline separated from our fill, and that's pretty nice. So let's drop in another frame that we drew. So now we're moving on to the second hand-drawn frame. I'm going to drop down the opacity and scale it down. We pretty much want to match this as close as possible to the position and scale of the previous frame. So that looks pretty good. Once you find your match, just bring up the opacity, and we're going to repeat the same steps again for this one. So you can see me duplicating the layer, renaming it fill, top one outline, and then what we can do is just go back to the previous ones that we created, Command A or Control A if you're on a PC to copy all the effects, and go ahead and paste them on the new frames. You're going to see some issues just because the lighting might have changed, the color of your paper might be different. This is caused by the color key, so let's just turn it off momentarily and let's reapply it to the new color of paper. You might want to duplicate it in case you have shadows or darker areas in your paper. So just mess around with it until you find a pretty good until you can clean it up pretty well. And once you do that, let's reapply the tint. You see we're still having issues with this color key here, so definitely play around with these until you are satisfied. So once you are, let's just recreate that garbage mask that we did. So this is the same thing, same process that we did earlier. We're going to work on our fill. So again, copy the effects on your previous layer, on your previous fill layer, and just paste them onto the new fill layer. Same thing, we're going to make a mask that's pretty fairly accurate. And then once we've done that, we have our second set of frames with our outline and our fill. Now the next step is creating that jittery type of effect that makes it seem like each frame is hand drawn over and over again. So I'm going to make my layers about 5 frames long. I'm going to move the second set over, and then I'm just going to duplicate the first set, move it over, and we're pretty much just trying to create a loop. I'm sure there's a better way of doing this, but you can see the effect that it gives. It looks like it's it's being hand drawn over and over. It's like a sketchbook coming to life, which is kind of the feel that I wanted to give it. Something that we can do is we can duplicate one of the outlines, put it above everything to give it some type of consistency. If the effect is a little bit too jarring, a little bit too distracting, you can do that. One thing that I noticed too is there's a little piece, like a little line on his stomach that kind of disappears. So I'm just going to duplicate that layer and create a mask around that element, and stretch that out over your whole loop pretty much. So now you can see that that little piece is staying there, and it just doesn't disappear from one frame to another. So I think that this is not too jarring. I think this is pretty much how I want it to be. So what we can do is just make another copy one more time, put it at the end, trim it all together, and what we can do is pretty much pre-compose the whole thing, call it body, and then we can create even more loops by duplicating that pre-composition, I think is how you call it. Yeah. So this is not looking too bad. We can go back in here, make further adjustments. One thing that you can do is you can just add more variation. So you can select, let's say, the outline of one of them and use your arrow keys to kind of like move it around a little bit, so it doesn't look like it's the same two drawings being repeated over and over. If you add a little subtle movements in between each frame, you make them all different in a way, it'll look like more drawings have been made. So it doesn't, you don't give away the illusion that it's actually just 2 frames being kind of looped. So this is looking pretty good. I think it's time to move on. We can just duplicate this over and over to make this as long as you want. Like I said before, I'm sure there's a better way of doing this. This gets your your timeline very cluttered, but I mean, once you make so many copies, you can actually just select all and pre-compose that layer. Just rename it body, let's see, body loop. So now all those pre-compositions containing all those layers are all in one nice pre-composition. Alright, so the next step, you want to apply the puppet tool effect, and you can find that on the menu bar with that pin looking icon to the right. So I'm just going to follow along in somewhat of shape of his spine, and also make sure you're at the beginning of your timeline or at the beginning of where you want to start your animation, because whenever you apply the puppet tool effect, it automatically creates keyframes, and you can move forward in time and move it around, and it will automatically create an animation for you. So it's really cool, really fast and simple. If you're having any issues, just go ahead and check that checkbox that says on transparent. That will fix any weird things that the puppet tool might do. So once you do that, you can see that it's a pretty simple animation, created in like less than a couple of seconds, and that's pretty much the basis of animating our entire character. So here he is, and what I did is separate each layer, or each limb, sorry, into its own layer. So you can see that let's say if I shut this off, you can see that the mouth is its own layer, each individual eye is its own layer, and so forth, with the arms and with the legs. And another thing that you want to do when you're first kind of rigging up this character is you're going to want to move the pivot point for each limb where it makes sense. So remember, the pivot point is what the layer rotates around pretty much. So for the arms and legs, you're gonna want, for the arms, you're gonna want the pivot point around the shoulders, and for the legs, you're gonna want the pivot point around the hips, so that when it rotates, it acts normally. Then you're gonna want to apply a puppet tool effect to each limb, so you can actually create an animation of the legs bending to give the illusion that the character is walking. And if you're like me and you don't really know how to animate, or you have a basic concept of it but you never really went to school for it, there's actually a few tricks that you can do to create some simple animations such as a walk cycle. What I did, for example, is I just went on Google Images and I looked up some references of what an animation walk cycle looks like, and then you can see that I pretty much use that as a guideline to bend the limbs and animate my character into walking. You can do this for walking downstairs, going upstairs, fighting. There's all kinds of good references out there that you can use. And then once you're done with your cycle, your walk cycle, you can just pretty much just drop your character into your scene, animate his position, going from left to right if he's walking, and you can also apply a tint effect to the guy to match the colors and the brightness of your scene. Speaking of which, let's jump into the background, and you can see that I just stitched up a few pictures together, and just made it a little bit darker. I also applied a paper texture to the whole thing. I just set it to overlay, and it just kind of adds to the style of this thing that I wanted to give, which is pretty much it's all created on a piece of paper. Another thing that I did is I took a bunch of pictures of a leaf rotating around in light. You can see what that does, and it just to give this leaf a little bit of a stop motion feel to it. It barely moves in the final shot. I wanted to rotate and fall a little bit more, which is why I rotated the light around it, so I can animate the rotation of it and it looks like the physical object is rotating in the scene. But this is what it ended up looking like. I think that the light rotating around it gives it a nice stop motion animation feel. So these are just details, but I just wanted to make sure I didn't skip over anything, and I showed you everything that was involved in making this. Alright guys, that is it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did like it, please hit that like button, and if this is your first time on my channel, please hit subscribe and share it with your friends. That actually helps quite a bit. I want to thank the Academy for giving us filmmakers, us really independent filmmakers, the opportunity to be heard. My name is Chris Trini for Kriscoart Productions, and I will see you next time.